So now I had a question about Avatar, but I'm going to save that for later because I know it's coming out this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go see it and I'm going to give my out of the theater response. But this is kind of another off the top that Jeremy just kind of gave me an idea about. I wanted to ask him about because I did watch your stream last night, bro, and I wanted to ask you because you had some very interesting perspectives about this. Do you think that phase four, this current phase, out of all the phases of MCU, would you say this was a failure, or do you think that this was a bit of transition to the MCU? Because I'm a transition into a different what the MCU is going to look like going forward. Because when I watched your stream, I really thought about it. I was like, you guys realize this is the first time we took the MCU home with Disney Plus. And Disney Plus, say what you will about all the shows that have come out. I don't believe they really serve the same narrative as like phase three when we didn't have to watch TV shows to get an understanding of the phase. There were nothing but back to back to back good movies here and there. Um, but I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, do you think that phase four was a failure and do you think that has a lot to do with what we got on Disney Plus or how things were just written out to be going into the multiverse? Or do you think this was just a transitional period to get us to where we're going to be in phase five?
So I want to tie this into the Halloween franchise, and it'll make sense in a moment. Halloween Ends is a movie that worked as a standalone Halloween movie that did not work as the end of a trilogy. So I believe it was a successful Halloween movie and a failure of an ending to a trilogy or even a franchise of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I say that to say, look at the box office. Look at the Disney Plus subscriber numbers. What is a failure? No, MCU Phase 4 was a massive financial success.
Mm-hmm.
There are good TV series and good movies within Phase 4. I believe narratively, Marvel Phase 4 was a failure. And the reason why I say that is because everything from Phase 1 to Phase 3, it's like a pyramid. You start with Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hulk, these foundational characters, these building blocks. And as they added on new characters, they're gathering Infinity Stones. The trajectory of the narrative is going upward and more defined. And while they're adding the Guardians and expanding the universe, everything is still coming to a head. It ends in this perfect peak. And with Phase 4, this is such a rudimentary example, but everything is doing this right here, right? Like we're starting with same kind of deal. We're starting with Shang-Chi. We've got introducing new characters, Moon Knight, while also having to continue to service old holdover characters from what we all really love. I say we all, I think collectively, everybody loves Phase 1 through 3, except for the anti-woke douchebags out there. But for the most part, I think it's pretty unanimous. Everybody loves those. So what I think Phase 4 did unsuccessfully, and I think the television series play a significant factor in this, is their tight narrative that all served to come to a concise ending is instead, it's like they're throwing out things here, they're throwing out things there. And I believe Phase 4 was like, Phase 4 was almost like a choose your own adventure story, where I think they are giving audiences choices. Do you want to see the Dark Avengers or the Midnight Suns, all of these horror characters come together? Do you want to see all of these kid versions of the characters come together in Young Avengers. I mean, and this is kind of spoily, but Black Panther, Hulk, uh, other characters. Who am I trying to think? Wanda,
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye. They've all got young proteges or biological children or adopted kids that we're being introduced to. So this can be over here, this can be over there. We've got the multiverse thing that's going on. We've got Secret Wars that's going on. There are so many things that they can do, and they're setting up for the future where fucking everything is Marvel, and I ain't got time for that.
So I agree to an extent when you're saying that from a narrative standpoint. So from a narrative standpoint, I'll walk away from saying, what was the point of Phase 4? If the point is to introduce us to the multiverse, technically you really only did that with 3 projects: Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange, and then Loki, to an extent with Loki. The other projects, I mean, Black Panther does not address anything in the multiverse at all. They don't even address anything outside the MCU really that much.
Then we got this Eternals thing going on.
Yeah, Eternals takes place. It takes place after Endgame, but the way it ends, it's like, okay, how do you have a statue on the middle of the earth
and nobody's talking about it?
No one says nothing.
Nah.
Nothing. And then I know that Shang-Chi takes place, I believe, after the blip or during the blip. One of those two things. No one stops to mention, and again, Shang-Chi is actually my favorite, one of my favorites out of the phase.
Yeah.
But no one stops to mention, who is this guy who saved us from the bus? Like, why is that being made notable? And then also, the dark web is so finicky. You notice in She-Hulk, they reported that Abomination escaped, but they didn't say nothing about the fuckers that he was fighting in the fucking cage. Like, they didn't address the fact that there's an underground fight club in the middle of in our country, but they're so concerned about him escaping. So I would agree that yes, that to an extent, from a narrative standpoint, I kept asking myself, where are we going with this? But I would like to introduce a fact of, I personally think Phase 4 was all set up.
Hit me.
And I think Phase 5, once we get to the Kang Dynasty, that's the payoff. I really do think that's the payoff, only because when we got Black Panther, spoiler alert, and we kind of knew this, Shuri's our Black Panther, but the way it ended, she meets T'Challa's son, and she's not the queen of Wakanda. M'Baku's king of Wakanda. I personally think the reason why I bring that up, I personally think that in itself is going to cause another societal rift where maybe M'Baku may take on the mantle as Black Panther, and then it's going to cause Kang. It's going to cause a particular rift in the MCU where we're going to need all hands on deck after Ant-Man Quantumania, where we see Kang fuck some shit up, and we're going to see how the multiverse plays in it. Now, I will say this. I agree with Jeremy when he says, when you watch each movie, it's kind of like pick your own adventure. You got Shang-Chi, action drama / comedy. You got Doctor Strange, Midnight Suns type of vibe. You got Spider-Man No Way Home, 3 iconic Spider-Man coming back to fight a greater evil. Same thing with the shows. You got Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, all of these different things. The one thing that they have in common about this is that this particular phase, they were passing on the mantle. Like, let's just assume that, okay, Hawkeye, the next Hawkeye could be Kate Bishop. Obviously, the Black Widow is going to be Yelena. We also got our new Captain America. So we got a lot of passing on the mantle. Shuri's our Black Panther. I don't think we're getting Young Avengers. I've always said that it's possible. I don't think we're getting Young Avengers. I think what they're setting up is our new version of our Avengers in our MCU, and then they're going to have to deal with the ramifications of the multiverse. And Kang is the key of all of that, along with Shang-Chi's bracelets. I would say the quantum realm to an extent, and also Miss Marvel's bangle. I think all of that shit is connected to a certain extent. That's going to make us appreciate these little Easter eggs. Now, I'm not saying that makes it better, but I think we got more setup than for phase 4 to help us get us reintroduced into phase 5.
I think that's fair. And in phase 1, we didn't see the archetype. We didn't see the blueprint. In phase 1, we knew that there was a tease for the Avengers coming up, but we didn't know about, we got a tease for Thanos. So we kind of had an idea of what's ahead. And they have done that in phase 4. So not disagreeing with anything you said, I actually think that's a really good point, that in the next 3 phase, in 4, 5, and 6, it could end similarly to what the Infinity War did. Where does the Secret Invasion and Secret Wars and the Skrulls tie into this? Because the Skrulls do have a relationship with the Marvels, but they have no sort of, like, we haven't seen the Skrulls showing up in any of the other plot lines. We know there's a TV series coming out. So, like, wasn't Secret Invasion supposed to be this big thing that we were building up to?
Yes. Because, like, I'm glad you brought that up. So Secret Invasion, I think, and what I'm about to say, I have no insider information, but okay. Secret Invasion is setting up that Skrulls have always, as we know, has always been here, and they're impersonating government officials, some superheroes that we're not necessarily aware about as of right now. And also they're impersonating things where it could potentially lead our world in a better place or a good place. Now, remember, Captain Marvel, not all of the squirrels were good people.
Right.
Some of them were trash ass human beings. But what I loved of what Captain Marvel set up is that just because some of them were evil does not define all of them. And I think with Secret Invasion, I don't think that Sam Jackson's Nick Fury. I think that is a Skrull, like, fucking around with him. And let's just say maybe that's been a Skrull the whole time. I don't know. So, but when we get into Secret Wars, it's not about, it's about the comic book characters in itself. It's kind of like Civil War times 10. They all have a disagreement about how the Avengers should be ran and who they got to fight. That's why there's different teams. And I think Secret Invasion is going to set that up, because there's going to be, I think, a consequence of the Skrulls being there, Kang's involvement, and also these ancient artifacts that our superheroes have that they can't explain how to use them, where they came from, and what they have to do with the overall narrative. That's why I think there are some ramifications for Internals, but until they start addressing the fact that there's a fucking statue in the middle of the earth, or they write that off or something like that, it's going to play, I think, a major part in phase 5. So yes, I think we are building up to Secret Invasion, but even when you watch that trailer, I don't believe that's Nick Fury. I think it's really like Skrulls, like fucking around in our MCU, saying, listen, we're about to take over either in a good way or in a bad way. Because if you remember, and I think it was Spider-Man Far From Home, when we got that tease of Nick Fury in space, just chilling in space. Okay, they were setting up Sword. In the comic books, Nick Fury never ran Sword. Sword was his own entity. In the MCU, it looks like since he lost Shield, he might be running Sword. So I don't know, man. Like, I'm, to your point, I will say, yes, from a narrative standpoint, I have been very disappointed, because at least I could say with phase 1, I could say that it got me more hyped to see what they were going to do with Thanos. In phase 4, it looks like we're about to face Kang literally in the next phase. We remember we didn't fight Thanos until phase 3. It took us a whole nother like 5 or 6 years to get to that point. we're about to literally fight Kang within the next 2 to 3 years, maybe. I don't know. So I
Yeah,
mean, but so I agree. Yes, I think it's trying to set up, I guess, Secret Invasion and even Secret Wars in the Kang Dynasty. But I would have to say Phase 4, although there were some gems in it, I think this was all a setup to give us the path to Phase 5. So did
sure.
you have any more thoughts to that?
We've touched on a bunch of it. I guess just in summary, I feel like there are so many omnipotent beings that are being introduced, from the Celestials to the gods and Moon Knight to
Mm-hmm.
Kang. There are the gods in Thor. There are so many different omnipotent beings that are, and when I say omnipotent, of endless power. Like, there's not really supposed to be anything more powerful than Celestials. There's not really supposed to be anything more powerful than gods. There's not really supposed, so like, I don't understand how their power scaling works together and what their relationship is. However, I'm not off board yet. Like, I'm still
Mm-hmm.
interested to see where things go. I'm gonna continue to watch these movies and enjoy them, despite the fact that I do feel my the depth of my enthusiasm has become a little bit shallower.
Yeah, and I agree, because like he said, like what's the power dynamic in this? Like, are we saying, like with Moon Knight, these people are dealing with gods, and yet where were those guys when Thanos was on the planet? So it begs the question, like the problem with Phase 4 is that there's a lot of inconsistencies in their power levels, but also to that point, we don't know what time period Moon Knight takes place in. That could be before Thanos or after
It's
Thanos.
a good point.
All I know is that they're dealing with Greek gods, and I would assume those particular entities have a little bit more power than the Infinity Stones. But then again, I have no idea. But Jeremy, I want to thank you so much for being on the
It's been
show.
a pleasure, man.
What did you guys think about Phase 4? Do you think it was a failure? Do you think it was a setting up point? Jump into the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts, please.